This podcast was brought to you by Meros Cryptocurrency. Meros is a cryptocurrency payment system that does what cryptocurrency originally intended to do. Be a practical and secure form of direct payment, Meros utilizes the best of current technology in a powerful new way. It introduces a groundbreaking consensus mechanism called merit caching. This enables Meros to be both feeless and instant while maintaining the same level of integrity of traditional networks like Bitcoin. To find out how you can participate in the future of crypto payments, go to meroscrypto.io now.
Hello and welcome to State of the Project Meros. This is the March 2020 update, and you may notice that I'm speaking a little bit faster than usual, and the reason why is because we have loads and loads and loads to get through today. I am Cryptosi, the most handsome man in all of crypto, and I am joined by the one and only Kayaba. Kayaba, how are you, sir?
I'm good. You had like an independent tribunal for that one fact you gave there about being the most handsome man in crypto. I have several other candidates to put first, and I really just think we should get some judges here on the field.
I feel like it's one of those things that is beyond conversation, it's beyond reproach, it's beyond discussion, it's just a fact, and you're going to have to deal with it. The first thing I would like to speak about today is something that we didn't actually get around to speaking about last month, which is issue number 116, Random X configuration discussion. Kayaba, please tell me about Random X configuration.
So with Meros, we use custom configuration. And it's actually recommended to use a custom configuration in some ways. They very clearly say, don't touch this, do touch this. If you do touch this, make sure it meets XYZ checks. So basically, the Meros mining process is by taking the block header, which basically describes the block, even though it isn't the block itself. And you hash it with random X, then you sign it, then you hash it again. And that's the block hash. So in order to knock out any random X ASICs that may appear at some point, one of the things I did was double the amount of memory used from 2 gigabytes to 4 gigabytes. And that means if any 2 gigabyte ASICs do appear, they're not going to be able to mine Meros. And even if there's just no real incentive to make a 4 gigabyte option when 2 gigabyte is going to be good enough unless you make one dedicated for Meros. I'm not sure if we're going to be worth it just within the time span of Random X. You know, for all we know, this is going to be ASIC'd within a year thanks to the popularity of Monero. Anyway, so that was the main change we made, but there were a couple other edits. But the main thing this discussion was about was the fact that we defined the block hash as random X, sign that hash, random X the signature. Because of that, we were actually doing 2 random X hashes, which means we were executing twice the amount of random programs that we wanted to. So I was trying to discuss lowering the program count, yet directly lowering the program count actually hit one of the security boundaries that the developers document. They say the program count has to be at least X because of Y. I don't remember the exact reasons why off the top of my head, but we couldn't simply decrease the program count. So basically the discussion was, what are our options and how do we effectively reduce the amount of time it is to create a hash without losing security or losing memory or so on. And actually trying to remember, I believe it was we could either A, lower the amount of instructions in a program, B, lower the amount of times a program is run, or C, lower the amount of programs generated. And if I recall correctly, I'll actually pull up the issue to double check. Sorry, I actually have to pull up the issue.
It's actually been closed, so it'll be a
no. I have it in front of me. So what we did is we did decrease the amount of programs, but we also increased the amount of times they're run. So that's kind of against itself. We're talking about lowering the amount of time it takes to produce a random X hash by lowering the amount of programs. And even though we did lower it, we increased the amount of execution. But it was really just about ratios. You have to maintain certain ratios to be secure. And this did it, and I believe it knocked 25% off the time of the hash while remaining just as secure for our purposes. So it was really just about how do we want to tune the random X configuration to be secure for Meros.
Okay, so can we chalk that one up as a win and move on with our lives?
It's all about just finding what's best for your situation. Monero wanted 2 gigabytes to make sure it's accessible. We wanted 4 gigabytes to make sure that if any FPGAs or ASICs do come out, we have that extra edge. And this is what we did, and I'm very happy with the configuration we have. That doesn't mean everyone else should just copy our configuration and walk away. It's really something that you should read the docs on and decide what you want to do.
Yeah, it's what I did like about that that discussion, which was raised as an issue, was that it was actually really well documented. So if anybody is interested in finding out or watching these things happen in almost real time, please do check out the GitHub. The link will be in the description. This is the next question, or the next topic, I believe, because it's probably going to span a few questions, is funding. Now, there was somewhat of a huge announcement made during this month, which was the MIP, which I'm going to assume stands for Merit Improvement Proposal, 001. Sorry, Meros. My apologies. Meros Improvement Proposal 001. It does speak about funding, but Kayaba, could you please? I know it's quite a long, not a long proposal, but it's quite complex. In a nutshell, could you explain what is Meros Improvement Proposal 001, and why has it been proposed?
So just to give a bit of background here with what Meros improvement proposals are in general. They're a way that are meant to define standards, to say the least. So we have 3 separate categories. The first is hard fork, which means if this standard is accepted, we will have to do a mandatory upgrade of all our nodes. This is something that will fundamentally change how Meros works, hopefully for the better. That's the purpose of bringing it up. That's why it's a proposal. Yeah. Then there's network proposals. And these extend the existing network, but they would only be an optional upgrade because we allow different network versions to exist simultaneously. And then finally, we have application proposals. And this is like if you wanted to define how to handle wallets or how to handle usernames or an on-chain contact book. And they're really just meant to, they don't require any upgrades on any end. They're just meant to make sure that if we have multiple Meros nodes and multiple Meros wallets, they agree about how to handle things in order to provide a clean and clear ecosystem for our users. So anyone can write one and submit one. After a bit, it will be assigned a number. So in the case of Meros Development Fund, it was assigned 0001, which I'll get to in a second. And when it starts out, it's a draft, but it will become finalized and then either accepted or rejected, and then it will hit the network. So with the very first one, it's the Meros Development Fund, and this is actually something I wrote with a good friend of mine and a highly qualified developer. He goes by Plasma Power, and it would be a hard fork. But of course, since Meros has yet to launch, hard forks don't really have that much meaning. I probably hard fork the code every few weeks at this point, just by making some edit to something. Anyways, so we do have a pre-mine in Meros as of right now. And the pre-mine is distributed over 2.5 years, and it's equivalent to roughly 350,000 Meros. And again, it's time locked over 2.5 years. But this describes getting rid of the pre-mine. I've never liked it. I believe it represents centralized bloat, and I truly believe it's the one centralized thing about Meros. Everything about it is an open system where no actor has any special privileges. Technically I'm the admin of the GitHub repository, but anyone can fork it. It's MIT licensed. There's no restrictions on how you can edit it. So the Meros Development Fund, it would basically is a proposal to replace the pre-mine. And it would replace it with a 5% portion of the block reward. It's technically not 5% because it's 5% added to 100%, and 5% of 105% is more like 4.7, but sorry, it's a bit technical. So every 6 months, and at the start of the network, people will get to vote. So they can select proposals that they think are worth something. They can select people who they've seen develop to the project. They can select websites they believe deserve something. They can even select an exchange that says pay the listing fee. Well, I think that would be a horrible use of the development fund. That's what you can do. You could even pick a social media account you think is really representing Meros well and making sure the project is known to everyone. And you can assign a score from 1 to 100. And at the end of the voting period, these scores are taken and they're weighted by the amount of Meros the voter has. And they're used to decide how much of this 5% each proposal gets. And then over the next 6 months, it's paid out. So the reason why I really like it, besides the fact it's decentralized, I mean, that's really the main thing for it, is that it removes lump sums. Instead of 50,000 or 100,000 Meros hitting the network every 6 months, it distributes it weekly, a very small amount, so we're not going to really see as much price manipulation possible thanks to it. And it really opens up the process. Instead of me receiving the pre-mine and determining who gets it, users and fans of Meros get to vote on who should receive Meros. And because it's done by one coin, one vote, there's no master notes, it really is a more democratized process. We have to weight it by Meros to be secure, so I'm not going to say it's a one-person, one-vote democracy, although I'd like it to be. There's really just no good way to do that unless you want to start submitting government IDs, and that's horrendous. But it is meant to be the most open system possible to represent our community, not people who buy their way in. So it just allows our users to vote who they believe deserves Meros and reward developers and so on.
Aside from the announcement which was made in the Discord channel about this new proposal, because currently it's just an idea. I guess I'm right in saying that it may never actually come to be. At this point, it's still just a proposal. How did you decide on the initial? What's the word I'm looking for? How did you decide on it being 6 months per? Not super block. I guess whatever the Meros equivalent is for your voting period. How did you decide on it being 6 months? Was that an arbitrary figure? Is it the start of a discussion, or is it set in stone?
We've actually talked in the Meros community about DAOs before, and you've participated in these conversations, and you've represented the side of DAOs are good.
They are.
And at their time, our community, which was much, much smaller, seemed to be in the slight direction of against them. Hopefully, I'm hoping to change their minds, because this is still a draft proposal. I'm hoping that when the community gets in and talks about it, and we all go over it, we can find something we agree on. So when we had this discussion, I always took the side of being against DAOs. I personally believe they're full of drama. They bloat the chain with unnecessary data. And beyond that, they're full of scams. There are a lot of people who submit proposals that aren't really worth anything. They get in based on insider favors or just knowing the right people instead of actual merit. They get paid way too much, and then they don't even release what they promised some of the time. So my hope with this 6 month period is not only to remove the drama, because it's coming up less frequency, but also for people to really think about what proposals are important and important enough to warrant such a monumental period of time. Because this decision will last. So I'm just hoping that people think about it more, and it doesn't go into, oh, this guy was one of the lead developers back then, he has weight, oh, this guy has a ton of master nodes. But rather, this person submitted a good proposal and they've done good work. So, of course, it does leave a sort of gap for short-term funding, which I'm not trying to deny exists. someone says, hey, right now I'm wanting to do this, but I need money to do it. That exists. So one of the nice things about Meros is while we don't have smart contracts, we still have on-chain scripts. They're a bit more powerful than Bitcoin, I like to think, but again, they're not smart contracts. And one of the things you can do with this DAO, theoretically, is you can pay out to them. So if you have the DAO pay out to a group of people who have a script, you can kind of set up a sub-DAO. You can have the fund. I mean, it's officially titled the Meros Development Fund, but yeah, it's effectively a DAO. I'm not going to deny that. And you can have it pay out to an on-chain script where users can then release it to whoever, whenever they want. So you really can extend this to handle short-term periods as well.
I guess you're saying that there can be one short-term script for short-term payments. Could there be multiple? Could there be?
Yeah, anyone can write one, and in order for it to get funded, it just has to be voted on.
Okay.
And if people aren't happy with the flexibility of it, because again, they're not smart contracts, you can always go through a centralized organization. So while this is meant to remove centralization, of course, it's still an option.
Also, I guess these proposals that are funding these smaller development funds could also get downvoted and then cease to exist.
This podcast has been brought to you by Rhubarb Media. Rhubarb Media are the branding specialists behind successful crypto projects such as PivX, Vendible, and Libertaria. The Rhubarb style is both loved and respected the world over. So if you want your project to appeal to techies and everyday users alike, give Rhubarb Media a try. You cannot possibly be disappointed. Link is in the description.
So we don't have downvoting. So when a voting period opens, which happens at the start of the network and every 6 months, for the next month you're allowed to vote. And again, you truly just assign a score of 1 to 100. Mm-hmm. And all your votes need to add up to 100. So you basically get 100 votes to distribute. And that's weighted by the amount of Meros you have. And that's what determines the actual score. We use the weighted median we use for the spam filters, actually, in order to calculate. The only other thing I really want to note about it is, say there is a small proposal. Say someone wants to write a site for Meros, and people are worried they may get too much funding. Because, sure, it's a worthwhile proposal, but we're talking about something for the next 6 months. You know, one of the things you can do with these proposals is you can set a maximum, like yourself, the person who proposes it, not the voters, to be clear. But if someone says, I want to create a website for Meros, but I don't want people to be afraid that I'll end up getting 50% of the fund when really I'm looking at 5%. Because some people may vote way too much in order to try to make sure they get in, you know?
Yep.
They can set a maximum of 5%. So if they get anything over 5, their vote becomes 5. So that can really reassure users this person isn't going to upstage the process by people trying to make sure they get in by putting ridiculously high votes.
And what happens to the excess funds that they should have received?
Those get distributed to everyone else according to the scores. We normalize the scores to be a percentage out of 100. So we have up to 100 recipients. And that does seem sort of low, but considering I think PivX has 10 to 20 and Dash has 30 or so, it definitely should be manageable.
Yeah. It's difficult. I do say this. It's difficult to judge DAOs by the current crop of immature DAOs that exist, because we're trying to build something you're trying to build something for the future as well as the current. What I did want to ask you was, actually, before I get to that, let me just speak a little bit more about how this will work from an end user's point of view, something that just popped up in my mind as you were speaking. Would it be a case of, I look at the current crop of proposals, I see that there's maybe 10 proposals, and there are 3 in particular that I really like. One is for an exchange integration, one is for some kind of mobile wallet, and one is for, I don't know, a conference visit to pay some guys to go to a conference in San Francisco or some other cool place like that. I could then vote 33 on one, 33 on another, and 34, I guess, on the final one. Exactly. And then, right, okay, so that's good. So then I then rate things and how important I think they are. Mm-hmm. And I guess they're, okay, that's cool.
So if I vote 10 and you vote 50, if and we're the only two votes in the system. Whoever has the most Meros is going to win the weighted median. But the nice thing about this is it isn't just about two whales, it's about a large group of people who have the Meros split up. And, well, every system is going to have whales, and I'm not trying to deny that. We have pool-resistant CPU-only mining. I'm really proud of the system there. And I'm truly hopeful that it is going to reduce whales as much as possible. So between that and the fact we have an algorithm which works off one coin, one vote, instead of 10,000 coins, one vote, or one master node, one vote, I really do think we can create a process that represents the community.
Yes, and I think it does give the whales themselves an easier way to not be so heavy-handed. Previously, I guess if you owned 100 Dash masternodes, for example, it'd be quite time-consuming to vote 20 times, as opposed to just voting the full 100 times. And then you end up with some quite heavy-handed masternode owners.
If this is accepted, because right now it's still a draft, I still have to work out a couple of things with it. But if it is accepted, then we will include it in the GUI, of course, so it's easily accessible to everyone. And the other comment I wanted to make, sorry, it just completely slipped my head.
Well, what we could do...
I might have to come back to that.
Yes, exactly. And I'm hoping that this may jog your memory, because what I did want to speak about was the fact that this is a discussion. So how can people become involved in helping to shape this particular proposal, and who is eligible to put forward ideas? Like who is qualified to put forward ideas to help shape this proposal?
Anyone who has an opinion is qualified. I truly want this to be about Meros as a community, not like the one person who writes the few people who write code, or the person who's just the prequel who have been here for over a year. No, I truly want this to be about the community moving forward. So we have an issue on the Meros Improvement Proposals repository, specifically for this, to discuss what people like about it, what people don't like, what changes they want to see, what tweaks could be made, and so on. And then we actually have an issue on the Meros repository about funding in general, because the whole reason this proposal came out is a couple of users expressed their distaste for the pre-mine. Oh, and I did remember what I want to say. There is a proposal, no matter what. It's proposal number 0. And if you vote for it, you vote for funds not to be minted. So if for some reason you decide that the Meros Development Fund is best off not being there, if it should take a break for a little while, lower the amount of coins being circulated, you can vote exactly for that.
Okay, that adds quite a lot of I don't want to say game theory, but it does add a lot of options, because then it's effectively abstaining, right?
No, abstaining would be not voting. When you vote for this, it can win. If it wins 20% of the vote, 20% of the funds just don't get printed in the first place.
I see.
So it's not removing yourself from the vote. You're not forced to vote. It's saying, I like the idea behind... Well, it's not even saying that. It's you could be saying you don't like the Meros Development Fund. You could be saying you want to lower inflation a bit. You could say you don't think any proposals are worthy of funds.
Which I guess would be useful if the value of Meros gets a bit too high. So during some kind of bull run, like we saw with Dash, when the value was at $1,500 per Dash, and guys would be being paid a ridiculous amount to do quite small things. With something like this, I guess it would be a case of, well, we don't need all of that money. I would vote with a certain amount of weight that we don't create as much money as we could.
Exactly. So, again, the voting periods, if this proposal is accepted, they would be at the start of the network. So it's 1 month in, which is the voting periods last a month. As soon as 1 month in, this would start rewarding developers for their work. Because it's not necessarily about the fact that the network just started. It's about the fact that the network's been in development for years now. We've really been working hard to build a cryptocurrency worth launching, worth stating the name of, in a world where everyone has their own cryptocurrency at this point.
Something that's just, before we move on, because we do still have 2 more questions to get through, something that's just sprung to mind is this whole 6 months in between voting periods. It does remind me a little bit of when you vote for a politician, a regular delegated democracy politician. If you vote for something and within 2 months it's clear that it was a bad idea, is there any way to stop it? Or once you've passed the voting period, you then have to wait the other 6 months?
So this was actually discussed, a way to cancel it, because yes, it's a long period. And the answer is, there isn't a good way from the technical side of things.
Is that because you're worried about there being a centralizing way to kill proposals that have already been accepted?
No, my worry is just people spamming the chain. Already, there's some risk. But the nice thing about the voting period is you have to do a proof of work. A small one, of course. I'm not saying you have to mine a whole block. But you do have to say, this isn't spam. And we time-locked this proof of work, so it can only be done after the start of the voting period. So while you do have 1 month to generate spam, you don't have the 6 months from the past voting period. So I am trying to make sure that this doesn't add gigabytes to the chain. I'm really trying to be conscious of that. So moving on from that, what my comment was, sorry, I'm just trying to recollect my thoughts here. Oh, when you can submit cancel votes at any time, especially when funds move, so you'll have to resubmit those funds when you create a new send, potentially, it really just adds a lot of data to the chain. And the only decent way to do it from a technical side is if we gave that power to merit holders, because there's much fewer merit holders, and merit only lasts 1 year. So the amount of time it exists kind of coincides with the voting period. That said, that basically gives whales the power to cancel votes, miners specifically. And while miners and whales aren't directly equal, again, I'm very happy to have CPU-only mining, especially with pool-resistant CPU-only mining. It still isn't community members versus miners. And that's a power I'm hesitant to grant to them.
Right, okay. I'm going to wrap these next two questions into one because I'm worried about time. Consensus revisions. I know personally, because I have the pleasure of getting to speak to you almost daily, that you've been working on these tirelessly for a little while now. What are these and why are they needed?
So it's actually reversions, not revisions.
Okay. My mistake.
It's all good.
But okay, so what would be the difference between reversions and revisions?
Revision would be an update. Reversion is taking it back in time. When we do a chain reorganization, when we detect a chain with more work behind it and we want to move over, we have to go back to the common block. So if you have the chain ABC, and then you find out there's chain ABDE, ABDE is longer. So assuming it has more work, because technically that's not always true, you would move from ABC to ABDE. And the first step of that is to go from ABC back to AB, and then to sync D and E. So reversions, which we've already implemented for our blockchain and transactions DAG, this is the last place we have yet to, is basically just rewinding it to a certain point in time so that we can move forward on a different chain.
Okay. Pretty straightforward. Last question. We've almost made it within our time frame that I'd like to allocate. It was a pull request, I believe, by Jromero, who is your I guess he's the Robin to your now Batman. He's produced a Docker image. Now, what is it, and who will be excited by this new pull request?
I just want to say I'm so sad, and I don't know how you can expect me to answer questions when I've just learned both my parents have been murdered in a street mugging. No, I'm just kidding. So basically with Docker, they have the idea where here's a container, here's an application in it. Let's say it's a Meros node. So you run Docker. I actually don't remember the exact commands. I'm not familiar with Docker, but to simplify it, say Docker run Meros. It will download the Meros container. it will set it up so it builds from the most recent Meros, and it will start running a Meros node. And it's meant to be an easy and simple way to ship applications, no matter what the device it's being used on is. So if you're using Windows, if you're using Mac, if you're using Linux, it's all the same, because Meros is actually running inside the container. So it's meant to make it really easy just to set up Meros nodes on a variety of servers.
I've never heard of Docker before. I don't know what rock I've been hiding under. But is Docker a centralized company like GitHub or something like that? Right. Okay. So how then do you know that the thing that you're running from Docker is what you actually want to be running? Do you then have to trust Docker that they're sending you the correct?
It's the same as Git. If you Git clone something from GitHub, you have to manually verify it's what you wanted to clone.
Yeah. So I guess it's like with most other things, when you add in that level of, I don't want to say automation, but you're kind of adding in a small degree of trust. So
you are when you use anything on the existing internet.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, that's not like Ethereum or Bitcoin, of course. I'm just commenting when we're discussing the World Wide Web.
Is that something that you worry about, or is that sort of attack vector so minute that it's not worth worrying about?
Existed for years. They're valued at millions of dollars. They have investors. It's really, I believe they're enough of an established company where it's not my concern. Yeah. We're not a concern of mine.
Okay. Brilliant. Right, Kayaba, I do believe we have somehow managed to cram all of those questions into a half hour. The last question, which I love to ask you, and you equally dislike answering, is a Meros release date, especially if we consider that the Meros improvement proposal gets the go ahead. How far back do you think that will push the release date?
It's not a small task to add the proposal. I'm not going to say it is, but I wouldn't expect it to take more than a week or two.
So you think that the discussions will take longer than the implementation?
Correct. But I also think that if we decide to move forward with it, it would be worth the 1 or 2 weeks to implement it. It's something I spent a lot of time thinking and working out because I believe it's best for Meros. Yeah, and the nice thing about discussing it is it doesn't take much time. You know, people come in, they chat, they discuss it, they reconvene later. It's not like all other work stops while we discuss it.
Did I ask you previously, people who do want to get involved in the discussion, where should they go to join that discussion?
So there's a GitHub issue about it explicitly, but always if you just want to join our Discord and start talking about it, happy to answer questions there.
Awesome. Thank you, Kayaba, so much. It's been an absolute pleasure as per usual, and things really are ramping up. I know I kind of do say this every other month, but things are getting even more and more exciting. I'm really looking forward to see how MIP 001 takes shape. For those people that are listening that are interested, please do join the discussion. Like Kayaba said, it's not just for people like myself who are geniuses and really well versed in everything that there ever has been under the sun, but also for regular mortals and normal human beings like yourselves. You can just join the Meros Discord and just give your point of view, listen a little bit, learn a little bit, add your 2 cents, and it's all greatly appreciated. Am I right in saying that, Kayaba?
If you're asking me if I'm happy to listen to everyone for their thoughts because I value the community, yes. If you're asking me if you're right in that the fact you're a genius above all other humans, I will talk to you about that privately.
Kayaba, it's been a pleasure. Is there anything else you want to say to the listeners before we sign off for the month?
No, that will be it for me. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no. Thank you for giving up your time as ever. Please make sure you like, subscribe, all that other good stuff. Keep your eyes peeled for the text-based Meros updates, which are tri-weekly stroke quad weekly sometimes now.
Generally within once a month, once every 3 weeks. We had a fixed schedule. The fixed schedule wasn't kept to enough for it to be worth preserving. They're just updates. They happen.
Yeah, I think the thing is, unless you have somebody as professional as I am with this podcast, it's difficult to keep to schedules. So I can appreciate that sometimes you may drift in and out. The main thing is the content within the update is really good. So everybody make sure that you check that out. Obviously join Discord and keep your eyes peeled. And we shall be back next month with the April 2020 update. Gosh, we've been doing this a while. So thank you very much for listening. Kayaba, once again, enormous thanks for giving up your time to add this transparency to the development process of Meros. So thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thanks and goodbye.
This show is brought to you by PivX Private Instant Verified Transactions. With its groundbreaking zero-coin staking and masternodes, PivX is the top privacy currency. Feel free to trade some on Binance or Bittrex. And for more information, go to www.pivex.org.